A single $100 bill. That's all it took to shatter Alina's life. For serving a quiet old man in a threadbare coat, she was branded a thief, publicly humiliated, and just one word away from being arrested. Her arrogant manager, Mitch, was laughing. A wealthy customer, Gregory Preston, was filming her breakdown. But they all missed one crucial detail. They never looked at the man in booth 4. They thought he was a nobody. They were about to find out that this nobody owned the building, the business, and the very street they were standing on. The 5 a.m. alarm was a digital scream. Alina jolted awake, the darkness of her tiny studio apartment, thick and cold. For a full 10 seconds, she allowed herself to be just Alina. Not a sister, not a debtor, not a waitress. Just Alina. Then the chill of the October morning seeped into her bones, and the weight of the day settled on her shoulders. "Sophie," she whispered, glancing at the photo frame on her nightstand. Her younger sister, smiling in a university sweatshirt. That smile was the fuel. An hour later, Alina was tying the faded, light blue apron around her waist in the cramped staff room of the Bluebird Diner. The diner itself was a relic, clinging to life in a downtown area that was rapidly gentrifying around it. Glass towers and sushi bars had sprung up, but the Bluebird remained, smelling perpetually of stale coffee and bacon grease. Alina was a good waitress, not cheerful, not bubbly. The job had sanded those qualities away long ago, but she was efficient, precise, and above all, observant. She knew her regulars. There was Mrs. Henderson, who always ordered a decaf and a bran muffin, and who would talk for 20 minutes about her cats if you let her. There was Sal, the line cook, a grizzly bear of a man who communicated in grunts, but would always sneak Alina a mistake pancake on her break. And then there was the man in booth 4. He had started coming in 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, with a face full of dignified lines and hands that were weathered and calloused. He wore the same thing every day, worn-out trousers, a simple button-down shirt, and a tweed jacket that looked like it had seen better decades. He arrived at 6:30 a.m. on the dot, sat in booth 4, the one with the torn vinyl, and ordered a black coffee and a single slice of dry wheat toast. He never made eye contact for long. He read a physical newspaper, turning the pages with a slow, deliberate rustle. He was quiet, unassuming, and completely invisible. The other waitresses ignored him, assuming his tips would be as thin as his order. But Alina always served him. He was polite. He said, "Thank you," and he always left exactly a $5 tip on his $2 order. In the world of waitressing, this was a quiet act of profound decency. She called him Mr. Griffin in her head, after the street he always walked down after leaving. Today, however, the diner's atmosphere was curdled. Mitch, the shift manager, was hovering. Mitch was a man in his late 30s with a weak chin, slicked back hair, and eyes that darted constantly, mostly to the cash register or the waitress's tip jars. He was a small tyrant, drunk on the tiny amount of power the Bluebird gave him. "Morning, Alina," he said, his voice oily. "Try to upsell the breakfast special today, will you? We've got a lot of hash that's near its expiration." "Got it, Mitch," Alina said, not looking at him, focusing on stocking the coffee station. "And let's keep the pace up. You were slow on table 7 yesterday. We're a business, not a charity." Alina just nodded, her jaw tight. The fuel. Think of Sophie's tuition. At 6:30 a.m. the door chimed. Mr. Griffin entered, shaking the morning chill from his tweed jacket. He made his way to booth 4. "Morning, sir," Alina said, already holding the coffee pot. "The usual?" He looked up, and for a second his grey eyes met hers. They weren't vacant. They were sharp, intelligent. It was almost startling. "Please, Alina. And thank you." She poured his coffee. "Rough morning out there. Wind's picking up." "It is," he said, his voice quiet and gravelly. "But it's good to be inside." He unfolded his newspaper, and the transaction was over. Alina went back to her duties, the diner slowly filling with the morning rush. At 9:15 a.m., the bell chimed again, but this time it was a demand, not an entrance. Gregory Preston shoved the door open, a cloud of expensive cologne preceding him. He was a local real estate developer, a man who wore his wealth like a weapon. He was loud, demanding, and known for leaving reviews that could kill a small business. He was, naturally, Mitch's favorite customer. "Mitch! Table!" Preston bellowed, not even looking at the "Please wait to be seated" sign. He was with a young woman who looked profoundly bored. "Right away, Mr. Preston." Mitch scurried over, wiping down the best booth, the one Alina had just cleaned. "Alina, get Mr. Preston his usual, and be quick about it." Alina sighed, grabbing a menu. "Good morning, Mr. Preston. Can I get you 2 double espressos, a side of sparkling water, San Pellegrino, not that tap garbage, and I want the eggs Benedict. But I want the eggs poached for exactly 3 minutes, the hollandaise on the side, and the ham replaced with prosciutto. And if it's that cheap domestic stuff, I'm sending it back." "We only have Canadian bacon," Alina said evenly. Preston scoffed. "Fine. Whatever. Just don't mess it up. I'm in a meeting with the city council in an hour and I'm already in a bad mood." He dismissed her with a wave of his hand, turning his attention to his phone. From booth 4, Mr. Griffin slowly turned a page of his newspaper. Alina delivered the complicated order with professional calm, even when Preston sent the first espresso back, claiming it was burnt. Sal cursed Preston's name from the kitchen, but remade it. "Is there anything else I can get for you, Mr. Preston?" Alina asked, her feet aching. Preston looked up from his phone, annoyed by the interruption. He looked her up and down, a sneer playing on his lips. "You're still working here? Huh. I thought you'd be, I don't know, promoted to washing dishes by now." His date giggled. Alina felt a hot flash of shame and anger. She remembered him from high school, a few years ahead of her. He was a bully then, too. "Is there anything else, sir?" she repeated, her voice tighter. "Yeah," Preston said, leaning in conspiratorially. "My buddy told me he saw you taking classes at the community college. How'd that work out? Guess you're just a lifer, huh? Some people are just meant to serve." "That's enough," Alina said, her voice low. "Ooh, feisty." Preston grinned. "What are you going to do? Spit in my food? You probably already did." "Mr. Preston, that's completely inappropriate," Alina said, her hands shaking. "Lighten up, sweetheart," he said, picking up his full glass of water. "You're too stressed. You need to cool off." And with a flick of his wrist, he accidentally tossed the entire glass of ice water onto her. It wasn't a splash, it was a drenching. The ice-cold water hit her chest and ran down her apron, soaking her shirt and trousers underneath. The diner went silent. Mrs. Henderson gasped. Sal poked his head out of the kitchen window, his face thunderous. Preston and his date roared with laughter. "Oh, clumsy me," Preston howled. "Good thing you're already wet, right? Now clean this up and get me another water." Mitch, who had seen the whole thing, rushed over. "Mr. Preston, oh my! Alina, what did you do? You made him spill his drink. Apologize to the customer and get a mop. For crying out loud." Alina stood there, dripping and humiliated. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and angry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to take the plate of eggs Benedict and dump it over Gregory Preston's $1,000 haircut, but she saw Sophie's face. She saw the tuition bill on her fridge. "Excuse me," she whispered, her voice cracking. She turned and fled to the back, past the staff room, and into the damp, cold alley behind the kitchen. She leaned against the brick wall, the icy water making her shake, and finally let the tears fall. She cried for 2 minutes, a silent, racking sob of pure frustration. From inside, she heard Sal yell, "You slimy pile of—" and then Mitch's voice, "Sal, get back on the line or you're fired!" She took a deep breath, pushing herself off the wall. "You are not a lifer. You are not what he says." She went back inside, grabbed a mop and a towel, and walked back out to the table. Preston was on his phone, not even looking at her. She cleaned the floor, wiped the table, and refilled his water glass, all in complete silence. In booth 4, Mr. Griffin placed a few bills on his table, folded his newspaper, and stood up. He walked to the front, passing Alina. He paused for just a fraction of a second, his grey eyes looking at her soaked shirt. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, and then walked out. Alina finished her work, avoiding Preston's gaze. Finally, he and his date left, leaving a mountain of dirty plates and a single insulting dollar bill on the table. "Good riddance," Sal muttered, as Alina bussed the table. She was about to head to the back to change her shirt when she went to clear booth 4. Mr. Griffin's mug was empty, his plate clean. Underneath the saucer, she saw his usual $5 tip. But tucked just beside it, half hidden by the salt shaker, was a crisp, folded $100 bill. Alina stopped dead. Her heart hammered. $100? It had to be a mistake. He was an old man. He must have pulled it from his wallet by accident. He couldn't have meant to leave this. It was more than she made in 2 days. She snatched the bill and ran to the door, pushing it open. The wind whipped her wet shirt, making her shiver. She looked up and down the street. He was gone. He must have turned the corner onto Griffin Street. She stood there, the $100 bill flapping in her hand. She could pocket it. Lord, she needed it. It would pay for Sophie's textbooks. But she couldn't. It wasn't right. It was a mistake. She went back inside, her mind racing. The only right thing to do was to give it to Mitch to put in the safe. He would hold it in the lost, and found until Mr. Griffin came back tomorrow. She found Mitch in his tiny office, counting receipts. "Mitch?" He looked up, annoyed. "What now, Alina? You still haven't changed that shirt. You look unprofessional." "The man in booth 4, the quiet one. He left this," she said, holding out the money. "I think it was a mistake. He's an old man. I'm sure he meant to leave a 10 or even a 20. But it's 100. Can you put it in the safe? He'll be back tomorrow, and I can return it to him." Mitch's eyes fixed on the bill. A strange, hungry look passed over his face. "A mistake, huh?" he said, slowly taking the bill from her. He smoothed it out on his desk. "Yeah, you're probably right. An old, senile guy. Good on you for being honest, Alina." He opened the small, rusted safe under his desk. I'll hold on to it right here. Don't you worry about it. Now go change your shirt. You're dripping on my floor." Alina felt a wave of relief. "Thank you, Mitch." Yeah. Get to work." She hurried to the back. She didn't see Mitch pause, look at the $100 bill in his hand, and then look at the open safe. He smiled, a thin, reptilian smile. He didn't put the bill inside. He folded it carefully and slipped it into his own pocket. The rest of the day was a blur of aching feet and forced smiles. Alina worked a double, her clothes still damp and clinging uncomfortably to her skin. The humiliation from the Preston incident had settled into a low, simmering anger. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his sneering face. By 9 p.m., the last customer had left. Sal was scrubbing the flat top, and Alina was wiping down the last of the tables. "Time to cash out, Alina," Mitch called from his office. This was the part of the day Alina dreaded. Mitch insisted on personally reconciling every server's receipts, a process he dragged out, scrutinizing every tip, every voided order. She brought her zip-up pouch of receipts and cash into his office. "It was a slow night," she said, handing it over. Mitch dumped the contents onto his desk. He counted the cash, his lips moving silently. He punched numbers into the old adding machine. The tape spooled out. He did it again. A long, heavy silence filled the small office. "Well, well," Mitch said, leaning back in his chair. He wasn't looking at Alina. He was looking at the adding machine tape with a look of feigned surprise. "We have a problem." "What problem?" Alina's stomach clenched. "We're short," Mitch said, tapping the tape. "The register is short, and not just a little bit, Alina. We're short. Exactly $200. Alina's blood ran cold. 200? That's impossible. I double-checked all my tables. "Oh, it's possible," Mitch said, his voice turning hard. He stood up and began to pace the tiny office. "It's a lot of money to just disappear. You know, Alina, I've been worried about you. You've been distracted, stressed out. People do crazy things when they're stressed." "What are you implying?" she said, her voice shaking. "I'm implying you're a thief." The words hit her like a slap. "What? No, I would never. Sal, did you?" "Sal cashed out an hour ago. He was perfectly balanced," Mitch lied smoothly. "It's just your drawer, Alina, just yours." "I didn't steal anything," Alina cried, her mind racing. "Count it again. It has to be a mistake." "I did count it again," Mitch said. He crossed his arms, his expression turning to one of pity, which was somehow worse than the accusation. "Look, Alina, I know things are tough. Your sister's college. That stuff's expensive. I get it. You get desperate. Mitch, I swear to you, I did not take that money." "Really?" Mitch said, his voice dropping. "Because it's a very interesting number. $200. It's almost like, say, if someone found $100 bill." Alina's heart stopped. The money from Mr. Griffin?" "Mm-hmm. The mistake. You brought it to me. Very noble. Very honest." Mitch leaned in, his voice a greasy whisper. "But what if it wasn't a mistake? What if the old guy meant to give it to you? And what if you found out how easy it was? What if you thought, why not take another 100? Who would notice? No, I gave that money to you, to put in the safe." "Did you?" Mitch raised an eyebrow. "And I did. I put it right in the safe, just like you asked." He gestured to the safe. "But the drawer is still short, and you're the only one who handled the money all night." "You're lying! You're setting me up!" Alina realized, the horror dawning on her. "You took it. You took the 100 I gave you, and you took another 100 from the drawer." Mitch scoffed, a look of mock offense on his face. "Me? Steal from my own register? Why would I do that? I'm the manager. You're a desperate girl with a mountain of debt. Who do you think the owner's going to believe? I don't care. I didn't do it." "It doesn't matter," Mitch said, his eyes cold and flat. "As of right now, you're suspended, Alina. Pending a full investigation." "Suspended? You can't. I need this job." "Should have thought of that before you got sticky fingers," Mitch sneered. "I have to report this to the regional owner. A representative from Ethelred Properties, the company that owns the building, is doing a walkthrough tomorrow anyway. Perfect timing. You be here. 10:00 a.m. sharp. We're going to have a little meeting. You, me, and the representative. And I'll be recommending your termination. And, very likely, Pressing criminal charges. Criminal charges. Alina felt the floor drop out from under her. She couldn't breathe. Jail? A criminal record. She would never get another job. Sophie. Sophie would have to drop out. "Get out," Mitch said, pointing to the door. "And don't even think about taking your tips for the night. They're being held as evidence." Numb, Alina unfastened her apron, the one still damp from Preston's attack, and threw it on the floor. She walked out of the diner, the bell chiming mockingly behind her. The cold night air hit her, but she didn't feel it. She saw her entire life, the fragile thing she had built, crumbling to dust, all because of a quiet old man and $100 bill. She walked the 2 miles home, tears streaming down her face. When she got to her apartment, she collapsed onto her bed, not even bothering to turn on the light, and wept. Alina didn't sleep. She sat on her sofa, wrapped in a blanket, watching the grey light of dawn creep into her apartment. She felt hollowed out. Sophie called around 8 a.m., cheerful, talking about an upcoming exam. Alina tried to sound normal, but her voice kept cracking. "Alina, what's wrong? You sound awful," Sophie said, her tone shifting instantly to concern. Alina broke. She told her everything. The spill, the $100, Mitch, the accusation. "He's firing you, and calling the cops?" Sophie was shouting into the phone. "I'm coming home, I'll quit, I'll get a job, we'll fight this." "No," Alina said, a surge of protective energy cutting through her despair. "You will do no such thing. You will stay in school. That is not negotiable. I'll fix this. I'm going to the diner. I'm going to talk to this representative. I'll tell them the truth. Alina, he's not going to believe you over a manager. I have to try, Soph. I have to." At 9:45 a.m., Alina stood outside the Bluebird Diner. She felt sick. Her hands were clammy, and her heart was a cold stone in her chest. She pushed the door open. The diner was closed. A "closed for maintenance" sign was taped to the glass. Mitch was sitting at a table, sipping a coffee. He looked smug, rested, and ready for a public execution. And to Alina's absolute horror, Gregory Preston was sitting in the booth across from him, looking amused. "Well, look who decided to show up," Mitch announced. "The guest of honor." What is he doing here?" Alina motioned to Preston, her voice trembling. "Oh, Mr. Preston was just telling me about your performance." "Yesterday," Mitch said with a grin. "He's a pillar of this community. He's here as a character witness, to attest to your instability, your outburst yesterday, spilling water all over him." "I spilled. You know what happened," Alina sputtered. "Doesn't matter what I know. It matters what we tell the rep," Mitch said. Preston leaned forward, his face a mask of false concern. "It's a shame, Alina. A real shame. I told Mitch I was worried about you. Clearly, you're not cut out for the high-pressure world of, well, this." He gestured around the empty diner, laughing. "I'm just here to make sure justice is served. My company, Preston Realty, hates to see small businesses threatened by bad employees." "You're a monster," Alina whispered. "The representative from Ethelred will be here any minute," Mitch said, checking his watch. "This will be quick. You confess, apologize. We agree not to press charges if you pay back the $200, and you disappear. It's the best deal you're going to get." The bell on the door chimed. Alina's heart leaped into her throat. This was it. But it wasn't a woman in a suit. It was the old man from booth 4. Mr. Griffin. He entered, wearing his same tweed jacket, and looked around the empty diner. Mitch's face darkened. "Hey, we're closed, old man. Can't you read the sign?" Mr. Griffin looked at Mitch, then at Alina. His grey eyes were clear and steady. "I'm here for the 10 a.m. meeting. Preston laughed out loud. "What, are you her grandpa? You going to pay her bill? Get out of here, bum. We're in the middle of serious business." "I am aware," the old man said, his quiet voice cutting through the diner. "The business of a $200 theft." Mitch stood up, his face reddening. "That's right, which this young lady committed. Now security is on the way, so I suggest you leave." "You're lying, Mitch," Alina said, finding a sudden, strange surge of courage. "I didn't take it. He knows. He's the one who left the money." She turned to Mr. Griffin. "Sir, please, tell him. You left a $100 bill on the table. It was a mistake, right? I gave it to him to hold for you." The old man looked at her. A small, sad smile touched his lips. "It was not a mistake, Alina. It was a test. One that you passed." He then turned his gaze to Mitch. "And one that you failed." Mitch froze. "What did you say to me?" "The $100 bill I left was for Miss Alina," Mr. Griffin said, his voice hardening, losing its gravelly edge and gaining a sharp, clear authority. "A small reward for the decency she showed me, and for the disgusting abuse she endured from Mr. Preston." Preston's smile faltered. "Hey, you watch your mouth." The old man ignored him. "I watched Miss Alina find the money. I watched her run outside to find me. And I watched her, through the window, hand that bill to you, Mitch. And I watched you promise to put it in the safe." I did," Mitch stammered. "No, you didn't," Mr. Griffin said. "You put it in your left trouser pocket. And then, at 8:45 p.m., just before closing, you went to the register, rang up a no sale, and pocketed another $100. You shorted your own drawer to frame your most honest employee. You are short $200. Mitch, but it has nothing to do with Alina." The color drained from Mitch's face. He was staring at the old man as if he'd seen a ghost. Who the hell are you? How could you know that?" "You've got a blind spot in your security camera system," the old man said. "Right by the ice machine. It's a perfect place to watch the manager's office and the register. You should really get that fixed. You were spying on me." "I was," the old man said. "For 2 weeks." The door of the diner chimed again. This time, it was a woman in a suit. She was tall, in her 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a deep blue Armani suit that probably cost more than Alina's car. She carried a leather-bound tablet. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on the old man. Her entire demeanor softened. "Mr. Cole, you said 10 a.m. I was worried when you weren't outside." Mitch and Preston froze. "Mr. Cole?" Mitch whispered, his mind visibly struggling to connect the dots. Gregory Preston, however, made the connection instantly. His face, which had been smug and ruddy, turned a sickly, pale white. His jaw dropped open. "Cole, wait. Leonard Cole? As in Cole Holdings?" The old man, Mr. Leonard Cole, turned to Preston. "Mr. Preston, good to see you off your phone." Preston shot to his feet, knocking his coffee cup over. "Mr. Cole, sir, I had no idea. What an honor. I'm Gregory Preston, Preston Realty. We met at the fundraiser for the mayor last year." He was stammering, his hand outstretched, his face a grotesque mask of fawning panic. Leonard Cole looked at Preston's outstretched hand and then back at his face. He did not shake it. "I remember you, Mr. Preston. You spent the entire night complaining about the champagne." Preston's hand dropped. "Miss Davies," Leonard said to the woman in the suit. "Sir," she replied, "the audit is complete." "Audit?" Mitch squeaked. Miss Davies tapped her tablet. "Ethelred Properties, the subsidiary of Cole Holdings that manages this franchise, has been monitoring the performance of this location for 3 months due to discrepancies. For the last 2 weeks, Mr. Cole has been conducting a personal, on-site review. She turned her sharp gaze on Mitch. We have digital records of your register, Mitch. And we have the remote surveillance logs. We have footage of you skimming from the register on 17 different occasions in the last month alone. The $200 from last night was just the finale. Mitch looked like he was going to be sick. He sank into the booth. But, you're a bum, he yelled at Leonard, a last desperate act of defiance. The coat, the shoes, you're a billionaire. I am, Leonard said simply. My father was a janitor. He left me this tweed jacket. I wear it to remind me of what real work looks like. I find it clarifying. It shows me who people really are. He turned his cold grey eyes on Preston. Some people see an old man and show basic decency, he said, nodding to Alina. Other people see a target for their amusement. Or worse, an obstacle to be shoved aside. Mr. Cole, I assure you, the incident with the water, it was a complete misunderstanding, Preston said, mopping his brow with a napkin. Was it? Leonard said. Was your commentary on Miss Alina's career prospects also a misunderstanding? I found it quite revealing. You see, Mr. Preston, Ethelred Properties owns this building, but Cole Holdings owns the entire city block, and the block you're trying to get rezoned for your new luxury condos, the one currently held up in committee? Preston stopped breathing. I sit on that committee, Leonard said softly, and I'm finding your proposal deeply unconvincing. Your lack of character is a liability. Ms. Davies, please make a note to have our council formally oppose the Preston Realty zoning variance, effective immediately. Mr. Cole, please, Preston begged, his voice cracking. It's $1 billion project. You can't. I'll apologize. Alina, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was a joke. Alina, who had been standing in stunned silence, just stared at him. Get out of my diner, Mr. Preston, Leonard said, his voice flat. Preston looked from Leonard to Ms. Davies, his face collapsing in defeat. He gave a strangled sob, turned, and practically ran from the diner, slamming the door behind him. The diner was silent again, except for the sound of Mitch's ragged breathing. Now, Leonard said, turning to him. Ms. Davies, the audit? The final tally of your theft, Mitch, is $417,750, just from the past quarter, Ms. Davies said, reading from her tablet. That's felony grand larceny. No, please. Mitch was crying now, fat, greasy tears. I'll pay it back. I'll work for free. That won't be necessary, Leonard said. Ms. Davies, did you make the call I asked for? Yes, sir. They're right on time. As if on cue, 2 uniformed police officers walked into the diner. Mitch, the first officer said, you're under arrest for embezzlement and theft. Mitch let out a wail as the officers pulled him to his feet, cuffed his hands behind his back, and read him his rights. You can't do this, he screamed at Leonard. You set me up. It was a setup. You set yourself up, Mitch, Leonard said, watching him being led out. You just didn't know I was watching. Mitch was dragged from the diner, still screaming. The door closed. The closed sign swung wildly. And then there was only silence. It was just Alina, Leonard Cole, and Miss Davies. Alina's knees gave out. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself, her entire body shaking from shock. She was staring at the old man she had served coffee to for weeks, the man she had called Mr. Griffin. Mr. Cole, she whispered. I don't. Leonard Cole's stern, authoritative expression melted away. The lines on his face softened, and he once again looked like the quiet, kind old man from Booth 4. Alina, he said, his voice gentle. Would you be terribly offended if I asked for a cup of coffee? It seems we have a few things to discuss. The chime of the diner door swinging shut, followed by the click of the lock, was deafening in the sudden, absolute silence. Mitch was gone. The officers were gone. Preston had fled. It was just Alina, the woman in the severe suit, Ms. Davies, and the man she had known as Mr. Griffin, the man who was, apparently, Leonard Cole. Alina's knees, which had locked in place during the confrontation, finally gave out. She didn't fall, but she stumbled, her hand flying out to grip the back of a vinyl-covered chair. The world was tilting. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. She was staring at the old man in booth 4, but her mind couldn't reconcile the two images, the quiet, harmless pensioner and the silent corporate predator who had just dismantled 3 lives with a few quiet words. He was a billionaire. He owned the building. He'd been watching. Her mind flashed to every interaction, every time she'd poured his coffee, every time she'd made small talk about the weather. Had it all been a performance? A test? The thought made her feel nauseous, exposed. Leonard Cole's stern, authoritative expression, the one that had terrified Preston and broken Mitch, seemed to melt away. The lines on his face softened, and his shoulders relaxed, slumping back into their familiar, unassuming posture. He once again looked like the quiet old man she had served for weeks. He looked at her, his grey eyes full of an emotion she couldn't place. Not pity, but perhaps understanding. "Alina," he said, his voice returning to that gentle, slightly gravelly tone she remembered. "Would you be terribly offended if I asked for a cup of coffee? It seems we have a few things to discuss." The request was so normal, so mundane, it short-circuited her panic. Coffee. She knew how to make coffee. It was a simple, physical task in a world that had just been turned upside down. "Yes, sir. Mr. Cole." "Yes," she stammered, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. She moved behind the counter on autopilot. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the metal scoop. She bypassed the large open bag of cheap, bitter grounds that Mitch always ordered. Her hand went to the small, unmarked tin hidden on the shelf beneath the grinder. Sal's private stash. The good stuff. The expensive, full-bodied beans he reserved for himself, and the few regulars he actually liked. She didn't even know why she was doing it. It was an instinct, an act of respect that cut through her shock. She brewed a fresh, single pot. Her hands were steadier now, the familiar motions grounding her. She poured the dark, fragrant liquid into a clean mug, one without a chip, and brought it to booth 4. Ms. Davies stood respectfully a few feet away, working silently on her tablet, a silent, professional guardian. "Thank you, Alina," Leonard said, cupping the mug in his weathered hands. He inhaled the steam. "Ah, that's the good stuff. Sal's private stash." Alina's jaw dropped. He knew. The full, terrifying scope of his observation hit her. He hadn't just been watching the register. He'd been watching everything. "Please," he said, gesturing to the seat opposite him. "Sit." Alina slid into the booth. The vinyl felt cold against her legs. She sat on the edge of the seat, her back ramrod straight, as if she were in a job interview. Which, she suddenly realized, she might be. Or perhaps it was an interrogation. "Mr. Cole," she began, her voice a whisper. I had no idea. That was the point," he said gently. He took a sip of coffee. "And please call me Leonard. Mr. Cole is for men like Mr. Preston." He looked around the diner, a fond, sad expression on his face. "I came here because this diner, this specific franchise, was hemorrhaging money. The numbers didn't add up. I suspected Mitch was the leak, but our remote surveillance. It's incomplete, as I mentioned. I needed eyes on the ground, and I find, at my age, that my own eyes are the most reliable. He looked down at his tweed jacket, smoothing a lapel. My father was a janitor in a downtown office building. He worked nights his entire life. He left me two things: a work ethic and this jacket. It was his good jacket. I wear it when I want to see the world as it really is, when I want to be invisible. You would be astonished what people reveal about themselves when they think you are a nobody. He met her gaze, and his eyes were clear and sharp. You, Alina, treated me with kindness, not fawning, not pity. You weren't trying to upsell the old man. You weren't dismissive. You were just decent. You poured my coffee. You asked about the weather, and you treated me like a human being. You have no idea how rare that is for me. He paused, taking another sip. My late wife, Catherine, ran my first business with me. A single hot dog cart. We worked 18-hour days. We were treated like dirt by everyone, from suppliers to customers. We swore that if we ever made it, we would never forget what it felt like to be on your side of the counter. When Catherine passed, he continued, his voice softening, she left her entire estate to a foundation in her name. Its sole purpose is to find good people, not brilliant or connected or privileged, just good people who are being overlooked, and give them the tools they need to succeed. Alina listened, mesmerized. This quiet old man's life was a universe she couldn't have imagined. So I came here to find a thief, Leonard said, and I did. But what I also found was you. Me, she whispered. I watched you, Alina, for 2 solid weeks. I saw you handle that disgusting display from Gregory Preston. I saw him drench you in ice water, and I saw Mitch blame you. I watched you run to the alley, and I watched you come back with your head held high and clean up his mess. The grace you showed, I couldn't have mustered it. He leaned forward slightly. But it wasn't just that. It was the small things. I watched you comfort Mrs. Henderson when she was crying about her cat, even when you had 3 tables waiting. I watched you cover for that new busboy, Luis, when he dropped a full tray of dishes, telling Mitch you had bumped into him so he wouldn't get fired. And then there was the $100 bill. I thought it was a mistake, Alina said. I know. I watched you find it. I watched your eyes go wide. And I know, for a fact, that you need every penny. But you didn't hesitate. You ran out that door into the cold to find me. And when you couldn't, you gave it to the man you were supposed to trust. How do you know that? Alina asked, her voice trembling. About my situation? After the $100 incident, I had Miss Davies do a little research, Leonard said, his tone matter-of-fact, not apologetic. I had to know who I was dealing with. I had to know if your honesty was genuine, or if you were just scared. She found public records, tuition invoices. He looked at her, his gaze direct and piercing. Sophie, your younger sister. She's at the State University, studying to be a pediatric nurse. You are working 70-hour weeks, including that night job you had to quit last month, to pay her tuition so she doesn't have to take out a mountain of student loans. Alina felt the blood drain from her face. He had seen all of it. Her entire, desperate, fragile life was laid bare on the vinyl table between them. This company, Ethelred Properties, Miss Davies said, stepping forward at an unseen cue from Leonard. Her voice was crisp. We have a new policy. We find that our restaurant locations run best when managed by people who understand the customers and the staff from the ground up, not by corporate appointees. Leonard smiled, picking up where she left off. This diner, Alina, is in desperate need of a new general manager. Someone who knows the difference between a good cup of coffee and swill. Someone who knows how to treat people. Someone who knows what it means to work. He leaned forward, his hands clasped around his mug. I'm offering you the job, Alina. Effective immediately. The position comes with a full salary, health and dental benefits, paid vacation, and performance bonuses. Alina's mind went completely blank. It was as if he had just spoken in a foreign language. She stared at him, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. Manager? She finally choked out. Me. Mr. Cole. Leonard. I'm a waitress. I don't have a degree. I dropped out of community college. I don't know how to read a balance sheet. You have integrity, Leonard said, his voice firm and absolute. You have a powerful work ethic, and you have the respect of the only other employee in this building who matters. He nodded toward the kitchen. Sal. We can teach you how to read a balance sheet in a week. We can't teach a person how to be good. A dozen thoughts crashed through Alina's mind. A salary, insurance, no more 70-hour weeks, no more choosing between her electric bill and a new pair of shoes. It was impossible. She took a shaky breath, looking at this powerful man who still looked like her favorite regular. Yes, I accept. Thank you. I won't let you down. I swear I won't. I know you won't, he said, a broad, warm smile transforming his face. But there's one more thing. He motioned to Miss Davies. The woman opened her leather-bound satchel and produced a thick, embossed envelope. It was heavy, made of creamy cardstock. She handed it to Alina. What is this? Alina asked, her fingers numb as she took it. Her name was written on the front in elegant script. You're a manager now, Alina. You can't be distracted, Leonard said, his eyes shining. You can't build a career and a new life here if you're still drowning in your sister's expenses. That, he said, tapping the envelope, is from the Catherine Cole Memorial Scholarship Fund. Alina's breath hitched. She fumbled with the seal, her shaking hands ripping the paper. She pulled out a letter on heavy, official letterhead. She read the words, but her brain couldn't process them. We are pleased to inform you. A full 4-year cost of tuition for Sophie, room and board, plus a stipend for books and materials. It wasn't just help. It wasn't a loan. It was everything. It was the end of the struggle. It was Sophie's future, handed to her, free and clear. Alina looked at the letter. She looked at Miss Davies's professional half-smile. She looked at Leonard Cole, who was watching her with the kindest eyes she had ever seen. The dam of her composure, held together for years by sheer, grinding willpower, by late-night shifts and constant, agonizing worry, finally broke. She put her head in her hands, right there at the table, and she wept. It wasn't a small, quiet cry. It was a deep, cleansing, racking sob of pure, unadulterated relief. It was the sound of 1,000-pound weight vanishing from her shoulders. All the humiliation from Preston, the terror from Mitch, the years of exhaustion. It all came pouring out. Leonard Cole didn't say a word. He didn't pat her on the back or offer a platitude. He just sat there, drinking his coffee, and gave her the time and the dignity she needed to let it all go. 6 months had passed, and the Bluebird Diner was reborn. It wasn't that the diner was unrecognizable. It was that it had finally become the place it was always meant to be. The soul of the diner, once smothered under a layer of grease and mismanagement, was now bright and breathing. The first thing that hit you was the smell. The perpetual odor of stale bacon fat and burnt coffee was gone, replaced by the rich, nutty aroma of a new dark roast blend and the sweet, warm scent of Sal's fresh-baked apple and cherry pies. The sunlight, no longer fighting its way through grimy windows, now streamed in, glinting off the polished chrome of the counterstools. The ripped grey vinyl of the booths had been replaced with a deep, comfortable blue. It was still the Bluebird, but now it was a place of warmth, not a way station of weary obligation. The diner was packed. The 10 a.m. rush was in full swing, and the air buzzed with conversation and the clatter of clean plates. Alina, her hair tied back, wore a crisp, navy blue manager's polo, but she still had an apron tied around her waist. She was everywhere at once, but she never seemed to rush. She paused to refill Mrs. Henderson's decaf, listening for a full minute about a new kitten. She shared a quick, encouraging word with a new busboy who looked overwhelmed. She was now Miss Alina to her staff, a title of respect, not of fear. She arrived at the pass, the window between the kitchen and the floor, just as Sal placed a plate on it. "Sal," she said, her voice full of genuine admiration, "that Benedict is a work of art." Sal, now head chef, with a new white jacket and a salary that reflected his talent, beamed. He was no longer a grizzly bear hiding in a cave. He was the proud heart of the kitchen. "It's the new prosciutto, boss," he grinned, pointing with his tongs. "Imported. Quality. No more of that processed junk Mitch used to order. This is what food's supposed to taste like." The entire staff moved with a new, efficient energy. Alina had completely overhauled the system. The servers she had hired, along with a few of the old hands who had quit under Mitch and happily returned, now worked as a team. The tip-sharing system she implemented was fair and transparent, ending the petty squabbles over tables. It wasn't a Shark Tank anymore. It was a crew. One of the waitresses, a veteran named Maria who had returned, caught Alina's eye as she passed. "Table 7 is raving about the hash, boss," Maria smiled. "It's good to be back." Alina's life outside the diner was just as transformed. The tiny, cold studio apartment was a memory. She now lived in a bright, clean, 2-bedroom apartment complex, just 10 minutes away. It wasn't a luxury condo, but it was a sanctuary. The second bedroom was officially Sophie's room. And her sister, acing her midterms and thriving, came home most weekends. The Catherine Cole Memorial Scholarship Fund had taken the crushing weight of tuition off their shoulders, and for the first time, Alina and Sophie could talk about the future, not just how to survive the present. Alina was exhausted, but it was a new kind of exhaustion. 3 nights a week, she was enrolled in online business management courses, fully paid for by Cole Holdings. She was learning payroll, supply chain logistics, and marketing. She was tired, but it was the good tired. It was the satisfying ache of building, not the draining fatigue of just surviving. And what of the architects of her past misery? Their justice had been swift and silent. Mitch, faced with the mountain of video evidence and Miss Davies's meticulous audit, had taken a plea bargain. He served 6 months, but the felony conviction for grand larceny meant he was blacklisted from any position of financial trust for life. He was a pariah in the industry he had lorded over. Gregory Preston's fall was more spectacular. Leonard Cole's quiet opposition on the zoning committee was the first domino. When word got out that Cole Holdings, the city's most powerful and respected developer, had flagged Preston's project for character liabilities, other investors got nervous. The city council, sensing a shift in the wind, denied the zoning variance. Preston's billion-dollar project collapsed, taking his company with it. He was last seen in a grainy tabloid photo, arguing with a valet. A man reduced to the same petty, public anger, only now nobody was afraid of him. At 10:30 a.m. on the dot, the bell on the diner door chimed. Alina looked up from the register and broke into a wide, genuine smile. "Morning, Leonard." Leonard Cole walked in, looking exactly as he had the first day she saw him. He wore his familiar tweed jacket, his worn trousers, and a simple button-down. He was no longer an investigator in disguise. He was just a regular, a mentor, a friend. He took his seat in booth 4, the booth Alina had personally ensured was the first one to be reupholstered. "Morning, Alina," he said, his grey eyes crinkling at the corners as he observed the bustling, happy room. "Busy day." "The best kind," she said, arriving with a mug and a carafe of the dark roast. She poured his black coffee without him ever having to ask. "I see the new pie special is a hit," he said, nodding to the nearly empty display case. "Sal's grandmother's recipe," Alina said, her voice hushed in mock conspiracy. "Don't tell him I told you. But the secret is a little bit of almond extract in the crust." Leonard chuckled, a low, warm sound. He unfolded his physical newspaper, the picture of comfortable routine. "Miss Davies sends her compliments on your food cost report. You're 5% under budget." "I told Sal we get a bonus if we stay there," Alina replied. "He's suddenly become very passionate about reducing waste." They both smiled. Leonard took a sip of his coffee and looked at her over the rim of the mug. His expression turned serious, but soft. "You've done a wonderful job with this place, Alina," he said quietly, his gaze sweeping the room. "Catherine, my wife, she would have loved it. She would have loved you." Alina felt that familiar, sudden warmth in her chest, the one that always appeared when he spoke of his late wife. It was the feeling of being seen, of being worthy. The tears that once came from humiliation and anger now only pricked at her eyes from a place of profound gratitude. "Thank you, Leonard," she whispered, "for everything, for trusting me." "You earned it, Alina," he said simply, his voice firm. "You earned all of it." He returned to his newspaper, just another quiet customer. Alina watched him for a moment. This billionaire in a threadbare coat who had changed her world, not with a mountain of money, but with an opportunity. She turned and looked out over her diner. She had learned the hardest and best lesson of her life. It didn't matter what arrogant, loud-mouthed bullies said you were. A lifer, a failure, a thief. The only thing that mattered was what you proved yourself to be every single day, even when you think no one is watching. Because, as she now knew, the right person might be. And that's the story of Alina and the man in booth 4. It just goes to show that you never, ever know who you're talking to. The quiet old man in the corner, the person you dismiss, might just be the one holding all the cards. Kindness is never wasted, and arrogance, like Gregory Preston's, always gets the bill it deserves. Alina thought she was just serving a cup of coffee, but she was really serving a test of her own character, a test she passed with flying colors. What did you think of Mitch's downfall? Was it karma, or was it just business? Let us know in the comments below what you would have done in Alina's shoes. If you loved this story of justice and hidden power, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see a good deed rewarded, and make sure you subscribe to our channel. We have new stories of instant karma and dramatic reveals coming every single week, and you don't want to miss a single one.